4 of my podcast. Today, my guest is Vaidehi Agarwalla, who is an effective altruist based in Singapore. She is an operations manager at Momentum, an organization which helps charities raise funds. She is also a community builder for Effective Altruism and has run events that teach people about the principles of Effective Altruism. Hi Vaidehi, welcome to my show.
Hi Vedant, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I know a lot about Effective Altruism, so I'm excited to learn even more.
Great.
So Vaidehi, I'm curious to know what got you interested in Effective Altruism?
So I was in college when I came across the website called 80,000 Hours. And in that website, they try to teach you about how you can have, do good with your career. So because I was in college, I was thinking about, what jobs will I try to apply for when I graduate? And this website was telling me all of these cool things about effective altruism and all the different sort of cause areas, such as helping people in developing countries, such as India or countries in Africa, and how to use evidence and reason to do that.
Were you also thinking about joining 80,000 Hours?
At that point, no, I wasn't. I was mostly just, using the resources that they had, like all the interesting, research that they'd done on different ways to help people. Or people and also animals, of course. At that point, I was thinking more about going into the global health and development space. So things like improving vaccinations and things like that.
How are you involved within the Effective Altruism community?
Yeah, so in the past few years, I've been primarily a community builder in the EA community. So I've been running events, fellowships, and conferences, which basically have been bringing together people to read up on all of the different cause areas in effective altruism, whether that's on factory farming or improving the long-term future or other topics. And then I've also been involved in another community, which is like a sub-community. So within Effective Altruism, we have lots of different people working on different projects, which is Effective Environmentalism, where we try to, look at climate change from an EA Effective Altruism from that perspective on how can we do the most good within the climate change movement and try to reduce, carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions.
Can you tell me even more about Effective Environmentalism?
Yeah, so Effective Environmentalism is basically just right now it's a very small community. We're very early stages, but we're basically trying to ask the question of how can we as individuals sort of contribute to climate change movement the most. So obviously, as climate change is a very global topic. Everyone is very concerned about it. So there's actually a lot of really cool, things going on in the environmentalism space, but it's not always clear how can we as individuals maybe have the biggest impact because there's so many other people working on it. So what we're trying to do right now is really figure out, how can we contribute to the problem? So for example, one area we think is quite promising is focusing on what is known as what we would call like neglected clean energy tech. So for example, have you heard of solar power?
Yeah.
And wind power?
Yes.
Okay, what about, have you heard of something called carbon capture and storage?
No, but from the name, I think it means capturing carbon and storing it.
Exactly. So carbon capture and storage is a relatively new technology, which means that we don't know a lot about it and it's very expensive to do right now. Just like solar and wind technology was about 20 or 30 years ago, they were very new technologies. So scientists didn't know, how can we make them really affordable so that everyone can buy them and use them instead of using fossil fuels, which, harm the environment. So just like solar and wind technology, we think that there's other technologies like carbon capture and storage and even things like nuclear energy, which you might have heard about, to which might be, if we develop them more and make them more affordable, then developing countries like India, China, Nigeria can then use those clean technologies instead of using fossil fuels as they, become bigger and more people are using and more people need energy, just to live and go to work and all of those things.
I've seen a documentary and it says that it's about basically nuclear power, and it said that people have tried using nuclear energy lots of times, and either there were leaks or meltdowns in the plants. So now people don't want to use it anymore.
Right, yeah. So nuclear energy is a really complicated, or it's a very big topic, but essentially it is a very dangerous technology. If you build a nuclear reactor that doesn't have the necessary safety measures in place, it is very dangerous. So for example, there have been a few accidents in the recent history, like in Japan a few years back, and in Chernobyl in the USSR in the 1980s. However, today a good portion of the world's clean energy actually already comes from nuclear. So there's a number of nuclear plants that are in action, that are being used today in the US and other countries as well, which are able to provide safe energy for people. So definitely, and also since, those accidents have happened, like a lot of improvements have been made to nuclear technology. So I think but definitely there's mixed opinions about it. And if we implement nuclear technology in other countries or increase it, we have to be very careful about it. But it seems like because it's just a very, very clean source of energy, we should try to investigate it further and see if there's ways of, using it in a safe way where people aren't harmed. And I think the other thing is, when we think about how do people get harmed by energy sources? So when we think about nuclear technology, we think about meltdowns, like you said, right? Accidents happening, leaks. When we think about fossil fuels, what kinds of harm do you think the fossil fuels are causing to people in terms of safety?
When people breathe it in, it can affect their lungs.
Exactly, yeah, that's a big part of it. So air pollution caused by fossil fuel consumption is a really big source of, the harm through that. And when you actually compare the numbers of people who've died or been harmed by the two different things, actually the fossil fuel, just because it's used by so much of the world and it is so toxic, is much higher than nuclear deaths from the nuclear accidents.
Yeah, and also I've seen that there's a hole in the atmosphere because of fossil fuels.
So the hole was caused by you're talking about the hole in the ozone layer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the hole in the ozone layer was actually caused by CFCs, or chlorofluorocarbons, which were found in things like refrigerators. So basically, you know how refrigerators are really cold?
Yeah.
What makes them cold is this liquid called a refrigerant. And within the refrigerant, there's this item called the CFC, the chlorofluorocarbon. That is the toxic chemical that when it's released into the atmosphere, let's say you throw your fridge away into the trash can, and then that goes to a dump, and then it gets broken, and all the CFC goes in the atmosphere. That is the CFC is what was causing the hole in the ozone layer. So what happened in believe it was the 1970s or 80s, the UN signed in what is called the Montreal Protocol, which actually committed to banning the use of CFCs in, refrigerators and wherever else it was being used, such as hairspray cans and so on. And actually, since then, we've seen a reversal of that. Ozone hole has actually been shrinking over time because people have stopped using.
That's good.
Yeah, it's really good. In fact, this is one of the big wins in climate history. And, people often study the Montreal Protocol to see, what can we learn from that, because it went so well. Because unfortunately, right now, a lot of the climate change, agreements you might have heard of, there is something called the Paris Accords, the Paris Agreement which happened a few years back. And there's been the Kyoto Protocol as well in the 1990s. There's basically a lot of countries come together and they say, we're going to fight climate change. But unfortunately, unlike the Montreal Protocol, that hasn't quite resulted in, we're not making the progress we want to make.
Are there any challenges that you face in your effective altruism journey?
Yeah, lots of challenges. I think so. Maybe one of the things about effective altruism that makes it a bit challenging, but also really exciting, is that we want to try to do the most good, right? We want to help people, but we want to make sure we're helping them in the best possible way, using all the tools at our disposal, science and evidence, and, collaborating with each other. So sometimes it can be hard to know, what is the most good? Like, how do we know what we're doing is the best possible thing? And yeah, I think that's definitely challenging because, sometimes you aren't sure. And so you have to kind of do things, but, not 100% sure, is this the right thing to do? I think another challenge is maybe like, how do I put it? I guess there's lots of different causes that you can support, right? Like even, we've been talking about climate change, but you could help people, improve people's health. You could help animals. You could help, improve the lives of people who haven't even been born yet, right? People who, like our children and grandchildren, right? Of course, we want the world to be a good place for them, but yeah, so there's lots of different causes, and one of the reasons I do community building is because I think there's a good reason to work on all of these different causes, but sometimes the best way to do good is to pick one cause, to specialize in it. For example, learn a lot about the different kinds of animals and what kind of suffering they are facing in the factory farms, right? And so you can help them better. Or maybe you could become like a climate scientist, and then you can start to study that side of things. So I think that it can be challenging because there's just so many ways we can help, and not always, we can't do everything. So we have to pick one. I think those are the challenges.
When I grow up, I think I'm going to be part of effective altruism.
That's great.
At what time should I start thinking about joining? What age?
Sure. So I think the nice thing about effective altruism is that it's not really just about being part of a movement, like joining. You can also just think about the principles of effective altruism, which I think, and I think that you could start at any age, really, because it's the principles of effective altruism are basically trying to use, evidence and reason when we make decisions in our life to help people, and being open to being wrong. So, for example, like if let's say you think that the best way to help someone is by doing this one thing, but maybe that's just because you didn't know that there's other ways to help that person. But then when you learn that there's other ways to help that person, maybe these other ways are better, then you can change your mind. And it's okay to be wrong. I think that's something that can be very hard to know when you're right. It can be hard to do it well, or just being open to changing your mind. I would say keeping an open mind is really the big thing, and not just keeping an open mind on what you personally do, but keeping an open mind about like what kind of things you care about. So for example, maybe a few centuries ago, people didn't really care as much about animal suffering as they do today, or they didn't care as much about people who lived outside in a country different from theirs, just because there was like a less awareness on those issues in the world. But today, of course, we care about people who live in countries that aren't our own. We care about animals, even though they're a different species to us. So I think like that's really something that you could start doing from even, how old are you today? 8?
Yeah, 8.5.
8.5. Yeah, I think you could start that from today. And I guess the other part of, effective altruism, which I think is really important, is just being kind and considerate to everyone around you, and, trying to learn from other people and collaborate with them. And, if someone else knows something that you don't, I feel like this podcast is, I'm sure you've been learning lots from all the amazing people that have been on here. And I feel like that's already a big part of it. Just talking to other people, learning about the world. Yeah. So I think maybe the answer is any age.
For me, I think that first of all, we are animals. We are basically animals.
We are animals, yes. We are mammals. That's true.
So we should care about them as much as we care about human beings.
Yeah. So I think from a scientific perspective, there are technically a different species. But insofar as we are all sort of animals in the broader sense, then yes. We could say that animals are like we are human. We are the species. Our species is human, right? And then like there's elephants, which are one species. And, yeah, exactly. Our species is
Homo sapiens.
the Homo sapiens, exactly. So from a scientific perspective, we are a different species. But you're right in the sense that we are part of the mammal family, and the mammal family is part of the animal kingdom, and technically we are all part of the animal kingdom. Yeah, for sure.
For someone who is new to effective altruism, how can they be extra active in the community?
Yeah, so I guess if you're new to effective altruism, you could, so many places like here in Singapore, we have a local EA group, so you could attend events in your local group. And you could also attend, there's some global conferences where people from all around the world come together to meet. Many people in the EA community also donate to effective causes or think about how to use their career to contribute to the world. So, for example, you could look at 80,000 hours and for sort of, guidance on what kind of things you need to think about if you want to change your career to like do the most good. And what kind of charities and organizations also are doing a lot of good, and you can support them in different ways. So yeah, you could donate to them, you could volunteer with them, you could apply to work there. There's lots of different ways. I don't think there's any one way, but I think there's like lots of different ways to get involved in the community.
You are moving to the US soon for a new job. Can you tell me more about that job?
Sure. So I am going to be moving to the US to work for a company called Momentum. I will be an operations manager there. So I guess I'll start with what Momentum is. Momentum is an organization that basically helps charities to raise money. And it does that by basically, using principles from psychology on how people give. So when someone gives money, sometimes you can you can study how they give and when they give, and they help charities to take advantage of that research they've done so that they can make sure to get more funds out of people. So, for example, encouraging people to give many times rather than just once. So, for example, if I give you $10 today, that's great. But if I give you $5 every month, in a year, you're going to have more money than if I just gave you that one $10 donation, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's what the company does. I'll be an operations manager. And what that basically means is I'll be managing all of the operational matters in the company. So like administrative work or finances, legal work. So basically when you start a company, you have to do all of these things as well as do what your product, your main goal of the company is, right? Like any organization has this. So yeah, I'll be doing kind of that side of the work, kind of the behind the scenes work for them. Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
What did you want to be as a child?
I actually wanted to be a detective.
I love detectives too. I like reading books such as Tintin, which are all about he solves mysteries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I was a kid, my favorite was I don't know if you've read any Enid Blyton novels.
I have.
Have you read the 5 Find-Outers series?
You mean the famous 5?
No. So interestingly, there was another series called the 5 Find-Outers and Dog, and they would go around solving all the mysteries in their little town in England during their summer vacations. And I was really interested in all the mysteries they solved, and then I started reading Sherlock Holmes and all of those. So I really wanted to be, I was very serious about being a detective when I was little.
Did you have magnifying glasses?
I did. I had magnifying glass. I tried to even write a mystery as a little kid. I tried to write a story.
Did you have a detective's hat?
I didn't, actually. I didn't have a hat. I had a magnifying glass. Yeah.
What are your hobbies?
So I guess like in a way, effective altruism has been my hobby for a while, but now with this new job, I'll actually be doing it full time. But yeah, my other hobbies are playing the piano. I like to watch lots of TV.
That's everyone loves that.
That's true, but I think I like it a bit more. And I like ice skating as well.
Those are really fun hobbies.
Yeah, what are your hobbies?
I like sleeping, eating, cooking,
Okay.
building Legos, reading, and playing outside, and doing sports.
That's great.
And the best of them all, being with my family.
Aw, that's so nice.
Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thanks for having me, Vedant.
This was so fun.
It was.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
I'm glad.
Dear listeners, follow my Facebook page, Curious Vedant, to get updates on my upcoming episodes, to listen at leisure on your phone, and get notified about future episodes. Subscribe by searching for Curious Vedant wherever you get your podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also listen to my show on CuriousVedant.com. Thank you for listening to Curious Vedant, and don't forget to rate and leave comments. Oh, and I also have an Instagram page. Don't forget to check that out.